In a world where junk food is cheaper than fruit and antidepressants are more common than multivitamins, being healthy in Australia, or even the world in general, is now something considered a luxury, not a given. Obesity has completely flipped the script. There's more kids now that are obese than underweight worldwide. Yes, worldwide. And we don't have a healthcare system, we have a sick care system. An industry that provides you help when you break, not preventing the break. Today we're going to be discussing all things health. Let's jump into it. Welcome back to another episode of the Finance Bible podcast. You're joined with myself, Zeke,
and your co-host, Oscar. But before we get into it, please note that nothing in this podcast should ever be considered as personal financial advice.
But if that is what you are seeking, get in touch, let us know, and we will hook you up with the correct professionals.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Let's get into it. Welcome back. But before we jump into the episode, today's sponsor is quite fitting. It's actually iScreen, which is Australia's top, basically proactive health testing that can transform lives. I've done it myself, their full comprehensive panel. I spotted key areas that I can optimize, key issues, genetic issues, biomarkers, so on. And since then, I've shed about 15 kilos, I've packed on some muscle, and my biomarkers have skyrocketed. Everything's basically looking good, and my longevity has gone up big time. So it's not just data, it's actually a roadmap to getting to peak condition and living an optimal lifestyle. So I'm going to drop a little link down below in the notes. Jump on there if you want to live a good long life. But getting into the actual episode today, it's a good one. We're talking about health, and we're not just talking mental, we're talking physical as well. We're just talking health full stop. So basically, let's just take a zoomed out approach first of all. Obesity is actually a pandemic worldwide now. So not just in America, it's affecting Australia, it's affecting America itself, it's affecting pretty much everywhere in the world. We live in a world where it's more common to be obese than underweight now. It's more common to be either one of the two than healthy, nearly. It depends on what country. But over 890 million adults, this is back in 2022, were obese, so it's over a billion now. By 2050, it's projected that about 3.8 billion worldwide will be overweight or obese. We have 188 million obese children, which is outnumbering the amount of underweight children. So we've got too much food, but we'll get to that soon. And it's costing about $4 trillion a year in the next 10 years. It's going to be a fair chunk of GDP. We're talking like 3 to 5%. So more children now worldwide are obese than starving. And we call it progress. Like I remember when I was growing up, I was watching, you'd get a lot of ads on TV and, you're trying to get food to places because there's malnourished children all around the world and stuff. Well, now it's the opposite. So there's a problem. Mental health worldwide, shocking. So over a billion people live with mental illness globally, like depression or anxiety and so on. It cost about $16 trillion in the economy. And by 2030, that's expected to increase pretty drastically. Global antidepressants, ADHD prescriptions, so on, have actually skyrocketed, while the root causes of such haven't actually been dealt with. Like they're ignored. This is why in the trailer you would have heard I called it we don't have a healthcare system. We have basically a system that helps you once you are broken. We should have a prevention system. So basically, if you're sad, what we do is we medicate you and go, hey, this will help you with your sadness, instead of going, oh, why are you sad, and fixing that. Suicide and emotional decline is ever growing. So the men's suicide rate, we already know, is globally 3 to 4 times higher than women. But women's suicide is actually on the increase as well as men. So they're both going up. In fact, women have gone up quicker than men in recent times, but men still dominate by basically a 4 times multiplier. So we are suffering pretty drastically. The stigma around it, and then you get people under treatment and, like, as in undertreated. They don't have people to talk to, or they don't know what to do. They don't know that they should hit the gym and so on. And then they ultimately they just go into social isolation because of lack of confidence or anxious feeling and so on. Cardiovascular disease, muscle loss, like cardiovascular diseases kill like 20 million people each year, which is a huge number. That's like not quite, but it's basically the Australian population minus a few million. And that's actually the leading cause of death worldwide. And then you've got muscle loss, like muscles deteriorating rapidly around the world, especially in people from 40 and over. And if you start losing muscle by the time you're 30 and it goes down and down and down, you hit 80, half of it's gone, and then fragility skyrockets. You got hips and stuff getting put out of place, dislocated, or your grandparents or your parents, if you're in the older generation, become real fragile and they just basically fall apart like an old machine that hasn't been serviced. And that's ultimately exactly what we are. We've got a huge food system failure. So realistically, UPFs, ultra processed foods, are like the core of everything now. I was actually thinking about it the other day. I went in a supermarket and I walked in, like Coles or Woolies or Aldi, whatever you want to call them, wherever you are, like whatever you've got. And this is worldwide. For us, we walk in and we have on the left straight away a little section that's got like fruit. You've got like your avocados, your oranges, your apples, and so on, and some spinach, some leaves, which, mind you, quick interjection, spinach nutrition has gone down like 60% since the 1900s, so that's virtually useless now. But anyway, you've got all of that, and then you've got your meat section, and that is probably maybe a quarter, if even, of the whole shop. In fact, I'm going to say it's less than that. It's realistically probably the equivalent of two aisles. You got about 16 aisles. So I'm going to say it's about an eighth, between an eighth and a seventh of the total shop. So everything else there is pretty much processed foods or some kind of garbage or just household items. And what we're finding is UPFs are actually cheaper per calorie. We're nearly talking a 50% discount per calorie than healthy food. So if you want to go in there and get, say, some biscuits or some salami or bacon or whatever, some kind of form of ultra processed food, even if you go to the frozen aisles and you've got all your things where you can read about 150 ingredients in it and it's meant to be just one little thing, then, that's what a UPF is. And they're clearly not good for you. Time poverty. So people being part of the food system failure, is that people don't have as much time as they've had before because they're spending it on a bunch of other things. And marketing from companies is getting more creative and better. So, you're getting marketed to buy the unhealthy food, and then convenience and cheap often wins. Nutrition dies. So if it's convenient to go to Hungry Jack's and get something for $15, when if you went to the shopping centre, you have to go for a drive and get all this stuff, and organic food or, one steak or something is going to cost you $10-15, then is it easier to feed your whole family by getting a burger box or something? And that's a harsh reality that we live in at the moment. Sometimes it's not just willpower, it's wallet power, and healthy food does cost more, and that's by design. The government's not really helping us with that, which we'll come into later. So it's kind of like a worldwide perspective, like a kind of zoomed out just background on everything that's going on worldwide. To add to that, you've got, in general, nutrition is on the decline because a lot of the places that are mass producing things, like if you're a vegetarian now, it's really difficult to get the vitamins and minerals and nutrition that you need because the soil is getting turned so quickly that there's not enough nutrition in it. Like what I said before with the spinach, the actual nutritional value of that is less than half of what it was about 100 years ago because the soil is just not quality anymore. So when they're mass producing and they're getting sprayed with all these pesticides and all of that kind of thing, having actual nutrition within is quite difficult and it doesn't retain it as much. So it ultimately just becomes like a water. And then if you zoom in on Australia, so the physical health collapse, like we've now got 2/3 of our population, as in the adult population, are overweight or obese. 2/3. So 1 in 3. You walk down the street, overweight, overweight, normal, overweight, overweight, healthy, overweight, overweight. Well, I can't really say normal because normal is now overweight. So it'd be overweight, overweight, healthy. Children obesity is raising. It's now 1 in 2. Well, not quite, but it's projected to be 1 in 2 within the next couple of years. That's guaranteed by 2050, they reckon, but I think we'll get there much sooner. And the obesity cost, if we go back to 2019, it cost what, 39 billion, and that's projected to go up to like 230 billion nearly in the next 30 years. So it's a rising cost. And then in terms of muscle loss, it's about 1 in 5 of people over 65 have severe muscle loss. So in terms of physical health there, it's no good. Like people are getting to the point now that they're just they're just overweight. That's all there is to it. They're just not getting out and doing things anymore. And I think about it from a perspective of, okay, what was I doing when I grew up? And this is only recent too. I'm not an old boy by any means. So if we go back even just 15 years, 20 years, I grew up on a block of land that had a backyard. There was a block of land next to us originally when we were building that was was vacant, so we could play on that. But we used to get the whole neighbourhood around. We'd bloody get out there, kick a ball, whether it be footy, cricket, soccer, or football for the European listeners. And we'd just get out there. We'd kick it every weekend. Of an afternoon, me and my 3 brothers and my sister would get outside and kick the ball until mum and dad would come and yell at us to get inside when the streetlights went out. So, yeah, like back in those days, and I can only imagine for the older generation back in their day, the level of activity that was being done. Whereas I look around now, and what I see specifically in children again is between the hours of 4 p.m. when they get home from school and 7 p.m. of when, dinner's getting cooked or parents are getting home from work or whatever it is, they've got PlayStations, they've got Xbox, they've got Nintendo Switches, they've got their phones, they've got iPads, they've got tablets, they've got all these little devices that just take all of their attention, their time. And I think that comes down to parents as well needing to have a bit of a stricter push with their children and maybe introduce some kind of incentive like you need to do X amount of physical activity before you can have it or whatever it is. I'm not telling you how to be a parent. I'm just suggesting ideas, each to their own. But that's been a huge shift. And even for people in their 20s, like going to the gym with mates or going and kicking a ball with mates and stuff, it's all in the decline. I don't see it as often as I used to. And now it's just like, oh, yeah, we got a spare few hours on the weekend. Well, let's jump on games or, it's making a huge difference. And it's such a simple thing, 3 times a week, you go kick a ball with your mates for an hour or two. There's 1,000, 2,000 calories depending what you're doing. And that's a whole day's worth of your calorie intake normally, depending on a whole bunch of different factors. But let's just call it for a male over 18, between 1,500 and 2,500. And, that's enough to help them burn the fat and keep it off. So activity makes a huge difference, especially when you combine that with the food, the ultra-processed foods that are hard to break down and so on. Mental health, we all know where that's at. I've spoken about it before. So nearly 50% of Aussies have had a mental disorder. 38% of 16 to 24 have reported that in the past 12 months. Suicide, we're averaging up in the 3,200s per year for suicides, and about 18 to 19 per 100,000 in men committing suicide. For women, it's about 6 per 100,000. We're spending nearly 700 million on mental health medication, so like ADHD and anxiety and that kind of thing. And ADHD specifically, the meds have been going up 10% year on year. So they're just growing and growing and growing. That's a huge issue. I think that obviously there's core problems that could be solved. I don't think, and this is going to put me at risk of getting called bigoted, but I don't actually think that half the population need to be on medication or experience actual mental disorders. I think it's overdiagnosed or misdiagnosed, and I think that people have too much time on their hands to focus on things that don't really matter. And or if they were getting out and getting active, eating the right foods and so on, they'd instantly feel 100 times better. So I'm not dismissing the fact that mental health does exist, but I think it's overrepresented nationwide and even worldwide. Then you've got government band-aid budgeting. The government is shocking. Let's put that out there. So on health, between 22 and 23, the years, they spent about 180 billion. $180 billion. And the trouble is they just do it on like band-aid fixing issues that have already arisen. Like prevention gets less than 2% of the budget. Hospitals are getting like 80 billion of it. So, if yes, we have to fund hospitals, it's common sense. Like you can't not fund hospitals. But if you're in a position where you've got all these people going to the hospital and your healthcare system is purely spending on fixing issues or band-aid fixing issues or covering up issues or providing medication to delay symptoms or whatever it is, imagine the impact if we just spent even half of that funding on prevention and education. Like if yes, the government would go into a lot more debt, or we'd have to move funding around from other departments, which is super easy to do, by the way. The amount of money our government wastes is ridiculous. Like, what was it, 2.5 billion on a 30-year contract to Nauru, a country that's got a population of 12,000, a country that's annual GDP is 160k US dollars, and we're paying 2.5 billion over 30 years to send 354 criminals to be housed there. Like, that 2.5 billion could go into health prevention. There's a simple solution. Like 354 people, ridiculous. Anyway, that's not the topic for today. If we found a way to invest in prevention, then in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, the cost for hospitals would go down because there'd be less people relying on them, and there'd be less PBS, there'd be less government spending on actual, subsidies and that for prescriptions and just overall healthcare in general, because it would be prevented. Yeah, ultimately, we're spending billions fixing bodies after they break, but almost nothing to keep them strong. Like, you go and service your car, and you'll pay a good amount of money to do that, but you won't spend the same amount of money to pay to service yourself. Like, a full-blown health analysis, you're talking like maybe 1,200 Australian, and that's like a full gene testing, which you only have to do once in your life because your genes don't change, to understand what your body actually requires and how you process things and that kind of thing, because everyone is different at the end of the day. And then, you get your stool sample, you get your parasitic tests, you get all of your hormone panels, you get everything done. You figure out what works and what doesn't work. And you can basically, just from that alone, that one investment of, say, $1,200, you can then go ahead and map out every single change for your nutritional needs and save endless amounts of money on long-term health issues. So why doesn't everyone do that? Or why don't the government add that into school curriculum, or make that a mandatory thing that has to get done at a certain age? That kind of expenditure could go on to prevent drastic issues. Realistically, like the deep causes, I've gone through a few there, but it's a rigged system. Like, processed food is cheaper, it's addictive, it's marketed aggressively, it's so profitable that they can just keep doing it and snacking it, and they can afford to have the low prices because it's not real food. Like, if you've got a factory that's making up all this fake crap and cooking it together with like 400 little ingredients that cost you nothing, like a cheeseburger at Macca's costs like 20 cents to make or something. It's that easy. Like, making that, as opposed to, running a farm and having cows and getting food for them and water for them and, taking care of them, vaccinations and so on, keeping them healthy, and then the cost of selling them, getting them to a shop and blah, blah, blah. You can see how that would cost more than some little manufactured UPF. The other thing is, with the rigged system, they'd rather medicate you than teach you to cook or lift or whatever, because prevention doesn't make them a profit, treatment does. Like, if they're selling pharmaceuticals and getting tax from that, or whatever it is, then they're making money on that, even though they're shooting themselves in the foot, because down the track it's going to keep costing more and more and more. But it is what it is. Time, poverty, economic pressure. So you've got high cost of living, no time for fresh food for some people, no time for movement, no time for rest. And this is crushing everyone, but in particular men, especially fathers under pressure. We've seen that happen, and the suicide rates and that kind of thing go up. But realistically, if you can find a way to eliminate time wasting, get the body moving, get some rest, get some fresh food, and cut out this crap. Like even if you get your food delivered, just get it delivered. Woolies, Coles, they all have delivery services now, DoorDash. You can literally get the healthy food coming to your door. You can go on butchercrowd.com. They're good. They do healthy meat and that kind of thing. Fully like grass fed or wild caught. There's a whole bunch of healthy alternatives out there. You can do HelloFresh if you don't have time, but even if you can't cook, you can do like what is it, Master Chef, Core Power Foods, E Foods, that kind of thing. Although I'd only do that if you're in a really bad situation because I think cooking is optimal. But in a terrible situation, that's better than just relying on a bag of Smith's chips. You've then got diagnosis inflation. So autism rates are up 41% in the last 4 years. Do we think that magically 41% of people have developed autism, like just out of nowhere? Or has the diagnosis of it just randomly started going off because there's so many different types of it now? Depression, anxiety, ADHD, all of these things are getting overdiagnosed now as well. So the mental health labels have been expanded in schools and they have a wider kind of net. So if you throw a net in the ocean, you're going to catch some fish. The bigger the net, the more fish you catch. Same thing with expanding the diagnosis and what fits into a category of a label. So, and the trouble is, once people get these labels, they believe it, they're stuck in it forever, and they start taking all these meds, they spend more money on it, and their mental health gets crushed. They go into zombie mode. So, yeah, mental health is something that schools are focusing on big time now, but they don't focus on environment, family, food, screen time, any of that anymore. It is not focused on. Even like general physical health isn't really focused on. You've also then got like masculinity and physicality, which is extremely devalued now. It's just punished in school. So being sedentary and basically not consuming enough protein, men are literally getting weaker, and so are women as well. But men are drastically becoming weaker because they're not active, they're not eating what they need to, and they're beaten down for being masculine. So when that happens, and physical strength is pathologized in schools and work, we're building fragility, and a fragile nation ends up being overweight and fragile and having issues. And it's as simple as that. So if you've got a generation of men with shrinking muscles and shrinking purpose and exploding antidepressant bills and exploding house bills and exploding food bills, and they're looking at themselves in the mirror and they're getting fat, they've got no muscle, it's easy to see how antidepressants can be the solution. But what are solutions that could actually help? This is an interesting thing to think about. As I said, schools could focus on obviously introducing some kind of education system about actual nutrition. And I'm not talking about bloody, canteens with hot dog rolls containing chicken tenders or something. We all know that's not nutritious. They could educate on what are healthy foods, why they're healthy, and why foods aren't healthy. So things like salami and that kind of thing, or just like ultra processed meats or ultra processed food in general, go through some of the ingredients on there. Take students through that in like year 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 and actually explain to them what it all is and what impacts it has, what health causes it has. Like you learn about smoking in school, but you don't learn about literal other foods and ingredients that can cause in your life. As well as that, they should also introduce that the blood work and genetic testing. I think that is absolutely essential to vital health. I think that that's just a no-brainer. And as well as that, I think that if we go out of schools for a minute, they need to fix the food chain. Like subsidize whole food. At the moment, we subsidize a lot of things that we shouldn't, or we spend a lot of money on things that we shouldn't. If we could cut that budget back, introduce Doge, and ultimately put a subsidy on whole foods or organic foods and that kind of thing, make it cheaper for the public to buy, and then increase taxes on things like UPFs, so ultra processed foods, increase taxes on tobacco, increase taxes on alcohol. Yeah, sure, everyone's going to blow up. Oh, a bloody beer costs $10 now, but guess what? A beer's no good for you. Like, would you rather pay $10 for a beer or $20 for a steak, or $10 for a steak, or $20 for a beer? Like, Let's think about this. And if tobacco and alcohol are killing us, then why are we going there? As well as subsidizing whole foods and taxing ultra processed foods and tobacco and alcohol and that kind of thing, things like potato chips, just the little things like that, even those little packets of like pasta that are just, oh, I don't even know what they are anymore. I don't eat them. I saw them, they're like a $1.50, $2 in the shops, and it's literally just a thing of pasta with a sachet. You put some milk in there and the sachet, like that can't be good for you. That's common sense, right? So increase taxes on that and then subsidize the healthy food. Then you people that can't necessarily afford to eat healthy are going to start to be able to afford to eat healthy and not afford to be able to eat unhealthy. Tax all the fast food giants, KFC, Macca's, and so on. They've got enough money that they can pay some more tax. And guess what? If it's a little bit more expensive for people, then what we do find is the lower socioeconomic you are, the more likely you are to have takeout. So if they increase the pricing, maybe that'll flip that script. We need to reframe fitness and discipline, masculinity, that kind of thing, activity as essential. Like resistance training has to be, or just any form of training realistically, it has to be compulsory in schools. Like hands down compulsory. Instead of making English compulsory, where you learn about watching stupid movies and categorizing what camera angles you're looking at, or writing poems on, the sun being yellow because of the reflection of sand or whatever rubbish it is, make them do physical activity. It's that simple. Get them in the habit of it. Fund more outdoor gyms, like we are doing that, which is good. They're becoming more and more common. But if we increase that drastically, it'd be good. And you could also not charge, you could create a gym membership tax rebate. So for anyone that goes to the gym, and you would have to actually physically be signed in, like it's automated. If you go to the gym, 3 times a week or something, then you get a rebate on your membership. You could also then look at doing, and this is going to stir some interesting thoughts among the listeners, but you could look at introducing, I won't say taxing unhealthy people, I'll say rebating healthy people. So let's say you go into hospital for a surgery at 45 years old, okay? And that surgery is something that could have been prevented due to, your BMI is 45 or something, or you're obese and you haven't been active, or, there's some kind of test that you put in place where it's like, okay, well that cost 10 grand, this surgery. For people that are meeting a certain body fat percentage or BMI percentage, or they achieve the rebate on the gym membership because they go to the gym or something like that, then they get like a 10% subsidy from the government. So you start subsidizing for the healthy people, and the people that are choosing not to do it pay normal prices. Sounds a bit terrible. Sounds a bit good. Depends where you sit. There is a way to make that work, though, and I think that then people would be forced to kind of be healthier as well, because they've got to, if they want to save money and they don't want to have to pay too much for expensive things, then again, if you're subsidizing the food and you're subsidizing the healthcare and all of that for being healthy, then you're going to be healthy. And if you don't, it's your own fault and your own problem. So it's a good way to do it. Preventative healthcare needs to be more universal, more screening, earlier blood testing, more eye screen. Lifestyle-based therapies should be put into PBS. Everything should be prevention focused. Like prevention should be the first line of defense, not an afterthought. If you get prevention, then you can prevent so many different things and so many people from going to hospital, to a point where you end up saving the funding drastically. There's a whole bunch of different things to talk about. There's a whole bunch of things I haven't really mentioned, but I just wanted to get on here and get these out. Ultimately, the body and the mind, they're not broken. They are breaking, though. They're being broken by a system that's designed for dependence. Realistically, all we need to do is take a step back, look at it, think about, okay, what actually is right and wrong, and we can make the decisions to improve the whole thing and flip the script. It's that easy. Before we go, I just want to take a moment as well to acknowledge the passing of Charlie Kirk today. Absolute tragedy, regardless of what side of the fence you sit on and that kind of thing. I don't think that in any way, shape, or form you should be resolving to violence to solve some kind of conflict on a point of view. And for someone's children, 1 and 3 year old daughters, to be standing there and watch that happen to their father, again, regardless of where you sit, I think is an absolute tragedy. As always, we hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you did, you know exactly what needs to be done.
Hit that follow button, subscribe, share it to friends, family, or even your co-workers, as sharing this podcast helps not just us, but everyone in the world to learn about their finances.
Thank you, darling.